Marv was able to realize his dream of playing football in the National Football League. He was a lineman, and so in order to keep his strength, he lifted a lot of weights. Truth was, he lifted too many weights, and he bulked up so that he was strong, but he was no longer flexible or mobile. He ended his career very quickly, and he began to wonder what he had done wrong and what could he have done differently. So he studied the techniques of athletes in the Eastern Bloc nations. When he came back, he began to incorporate those techniques in such a way that his former boss, Al Davis of the Oakland Raiders, hired Marv to be the first strength and conditioning coach in the NFL. The techniques that he employed didn't just focus on strength, the mistake he had made, but again on flexibility and speed. Some of those techniques are still used today to develop core strength that you hear so much about and perhaps that some of you practice. But Marv began to become curious. What would happen if an athlete, from the moment they were in the crib, had the opportunity to develop in the perfect environment? He shared these ideas with his wife, Trudy, and when they found out that they were expecting a boy, Trudy wanted to participate in the experiment. She abstained from alcohol and tobacco, as women should when they're expecting, but she also did away with salt and sugar in her diet. When Todd was born, his training started almost immediately. When he was 1 month old, I am not misspeaking, when he was 1 month old, Marv would stretch his son's hamstrings. As soon as he was able, he moved him to doing push-ups. When he was able to balance a little on his feet, Marv would grab his son's hands and have him walk on a balance beam, which helped him to walk much faster than most children could. Everything seemed to be going good. He only ate fresh fruit, vegetables, and unprocessed dairy products. Their son's name was Todd. Todd went to high school at Mater Dei, which was at its time one of the national powers of high school football. And as a freshman, he started at quarterback. He was destined to shatter all the passing records in the state of California, and by the time he graduated, he had accomplished that feat. He got a scholarship to the University of Southern California to play football, but before he got there, he had already become a national icon. You see, a local magazine in California had carried the story and talked about the training his parents had put him through, and he made the cover of the magazine. The title of the cover, Robo QB, Born to Be the Perfect Athlete. The fuss of that died down pretty quickly until a month later, Sports Illustrated picked up on it. They too ran the story, only this time the article was titled, Bred to be a Superstar. Now, with all the training, all the dietary things that were going on, his mother did want him to be well-rounded, so she insisted that he study art and music and classic Hollywood cinema. But his dad had recruited a dream team to work on the mental aspects of the game so that there would never be a situation, there would never be a surprise that Todd could not handle if he found himself in a game. Here's what it read in the Sports Illustrated article. Perhaps some of you read this article. It said, he has never eaten a Big Mac, an Oreo, or a Ding Dong. That's child abuse. No, seriously, he never ate a Big Mac, an Oreo, or a Ding Dong. As a child, when he got invited to go to a birthday party, he took his own cake and ice cream to ensure that he was not eating sugar or unrefined flour. The ketchup that he ate was ketchup that his mother made with organic honey. He was allowed to consume beef so long as it had not been injected with hormones, but most of his diet was fruits and vegetables. As a baby, when he was teething, he teethed on frozen kidney and liver. From day one, in his crib, he had a football. Not an NFL football, his dad said. That would be sick. It was just a stuffed football. When he finished his career at Southern Cal, he was the 24th pick in the first round of the NFL draft by the team that his dad had played for, the Oakland Raiders. And he was drafted ahead of this guy named Brett Favre. So do you think that mom and dad's dreams were fulfilled to groom the perfect athlete, the person that some people called America's first test tube athlete? You know, I think there is something about parents that whenever you have that baby, holding that little boy, holding that precious little girl, parents, tell me if I'm right, at some point you thought, I wonder what my baby will be when my baby grows up. Am I right? Did you wonder, will they follow in my footsteps? Will they take a different path? Will she be the first female president of the United States? Will he be the doctor that finds a cure for an incurable disease? Will she be a prima ballerina or a research scientist? Will he be an artist like Picasso, or will he win The Voice? We just kind of wonder what our kids will be. But most of us do not groom our kids for a specific purpose. We wait for our children to show us what they're interested in. And once they do that, then we will go to any means necessary, any means that we can afford to give our child the opportunity to pursue their dream however it is they want to do it. But most of us do not groom our children for a specific purpose like Marv and Trudy did. Not just a football player, but a quarterback. Well, believe it or not, when we read the words to the hymn, "Come, thou long-expected Jesus," we see that Jesus was born to be groomed for a specific purpose. Now, we've been talking about those different things through this month. 2 weeks ago, we were reminded that this season in the church is not just about the birth of Jesus, but we celebrate in this season our hope that Jesus is coming back again. And we believe that when he was born to set people free. Free from fear, free from sin, free from anything that separates us from God. That's what Jesus came to do. And then last week we looked how he was born to deliver people. And I'll still let you decide for yourself if Wesley was simply restating the same thing when he said he was born to set people free and he was born to deliver people. But what we looked at from a reading in Isaiah, that when he delivered people, what he did was he delivered people from unbelief and delivered them to belief. And so this week we look at the third thing that Wesley said, the third thing that Charles wrote. Jesus was born for a specific purpose, that he was born a child who would be king. Isaiah the prophet writes about that in his readings. The choir actually said this a while ago, but let's hear the word of the Lord once more. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders. He will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and peace there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness from that time on and forever. The zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this. Brothers and sisters, this is the word of the Lord. One of the things that I kind of like to watch is a couple when they have their first child. Have you noticed that relatively normal, well-balanced people, when they have their first child, become crazy? I don't mean Marv and Trudy Marinovich crazy, but I mean they come crazy. It's like the whole world has now changed because of the birth of this child. This child must be the center of the universe. I mean, before they had the child, when you talk to parents, you could have a normal conversation with them. You could talk about business, you could talk about sports or the arts, or you could talk about anything. But once that baby's born, there is only one thing you can talk about. That baby. That's it. That's all you talk about. Have you ever noticed that firstborn children, I'm sorry, for those of you that were second and third born, fourth born, I'm sorry, when you're first, and I wasn't, I was second, but when you're firstborn babies get more clothes than they will wear in their entire lifetime. You have a garage sale, new with tags, because you never got to wear. Firstborn babies have all the toys that they want. They can never have too many toys, right, Grandma and Grandpa? Have you ever noticed that firstborn children have more pictures taken of them than any other child in the family does? And today, with the advent of smartphones, there's much more video for the firstborn child. I mean, it's like there was a cosmic shift in the universe of seismic proportion whenever this child was born. Everything changed. Well, brothers and sisters, I want to suggest to you that is exactly what Isaiah is trying to help us understand. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given. It is a seismic shift in the history of the world. Everything that happened before Jesus was born now comes into focus through his life. And everything that has happened since Jesus was born indeed should show that he is the center of the universe. You see, the birth of Jesus is a sign. It is a sign of God's saving activity, and God is zealous to save his people. That's what Isaiah said. He's going to be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. All these titles have a weight upon them that would be impossible to fulfill unless he had been groomed for this purpose. And why is it going to happen? It's the last part of the scripture. It's so easy to overlook. It says, because the zeal of the Lord will accomplish this. I don't know that we think of God as being zealous, but this is what it's saying. The zeal of the Lord will accomplish this. You do understand there's a difference between a zealot and a fan. If you do not know this difference, tonight, turn in and watch our Oklahoma City Thunder on television. You will see the difference between a fan and a zealot. You see, when fans go to the game, fans wear their Thunder wear, and they cheer at appropriate times, and they make enough noise to give us the home court advantage that we need whenever we're playing someone. But zealots, they wear costumes to the game. They paint their faces. Suddenly, those of you that are thinking Thunder Zealot are seeing the fat guy with his bald belly and his luchador mask on. That zealots are obsessed. They are consumed with, they step over the line of respectable fanability. That's what they do. You break a zealot's heart, and they will burn your jersey. You crush the dreams of a zealot, and they'll be on you like a dog wearing milk bones. You know, I mean, there's something crazy about them. And that's what Isaiah says. God is zealous for you. God wants to save you. God sent Jesus to be a baby who was a king that would rule over you. See, prior to this, Isaiah says the people walked in darkness, and all around our lives was darkness and depression and death. But when this baby was born, everything changed. Now it's life and light and joy because there's a shift in everything that has happened because of this baby. Jesus was born. He was groomed in heaven to be king, to reign supreme over all that is. Unlike other kings, Jesus is good and loving and kind. When I thought about that this week, I thought about another ruler. Have any of y'all ever heard of Vladimir Ilyich Ulyanov? You actually have. You just don't know him by that name. He was called Lenin, and he was the architect of the Soviet Union. When Lenin rose to power, he was obsessed with eliminating Christianity out of this new Soviet Union. He wanted to keep the name of Christ out of it. The first order he gave on May 1st, 1919 was that churches and priests needed to be eliminated. He said that that all the priests should be arrested as enemies of the revolution and as saboteurs, and they should be executed everywhere under any means as often as possible. Our churches should be closed, cathedrals should be sealed and turned into warehouses. These are the words of a man who himself was a baptized Orthodox Christian, but he believed what he had read, that religion was an opiate of the people. That's not the kind of king Jesus is going to be. We read in verse 6 that it says, the government, the authority will rest upon his shoulders, but his kingdom will be different. His will be a kingdom that is established in righteousness and justice and peace. I mean, sometimes when we look at the world, maybe this is just me, but I don't think so. Sometimes when people look at the world and we see injustice and we see things that happen, we find ourselves thinking, I wish God would do this. I wish God would do this about this situation. And really what we're thinking is because God is God and God can get away with it, because if I did it, I'd get arrested. We want the world to be just, and the world is not always just. And we may want God to do things, but God doesn't do them our way, and you understand why, right? Because God is zealous to save all people. God does not think the way we think. God's ways are higher than our ways. God's character is different than our character, and Jesus comes and fills us with the Spirit so that our character might be a little less like it was and a lot more like His is. Make no mistake, brothers and sisters, the character of the king is reflected in the type of kingdom that there is, and Jesus is a different kind of king who's going to bring in a different kind of kingdom. See, that's what Marv Marinovich wanted for his son Todd. A different kind of football player than the world had ever seen. The perfect athlete that had every opportunity physically, with nutrition, mentally, with his dream team of consultants to be the best football player ever. Again, as I said, he became starting quarterback at a national power modern day when he was a freshman. But outside the lines, things were pretty tough. Marv and Trudy's relationship began to deteriorate, and in Todd's second year of high school, they chose to split and get divorced. Todd chose to go live with his dad. When he did that, he had to transfer to a different high school. The pressures of being the perfect athlete had begun to weigh on him since his freshman year. He wanted something to help him remain calm, and that was when Todd began to use marijuana. When he moved in with his dad, he said it was like two bachelors living together. Many Friday nights when I got home, Dad just said, "Have fun." And Dad knew I was going to go out and get stoned. How ironic is it that his dad doesn't let him eat a Big Mac, an Oreo, or a Ding Dong, but he turns a blind eye when his son was smoking a doobie? Doesn't make sense. Todd managed to get through high school, but the reason he finished his college career was a year early because the school kicked him out because of his substance abuse. And yet he was still drafted in the first round by the Oakland Raiders. He only had a brief career in the NFL, 3 years, because of his drug use. He decided to pursue a career north of the border. He signed on with a team in the Canadian Football League, but he ultimately was off that team because of his chronic substance abuse. He still didn't give up. He was bred to be the perfect quarterback, so he signed on with an arena football team. He set all kinds of records in the few games he played, but his play was also noted with angry outbursts by his drug-raged self that he threw things at the refs at the game. He was banned from the league. As a young adult, bred to be the superstar of football, bred to be a different kind of player, he was out of options. So he began to do something full-time, heroin. And then he spent a year in jail. If you have ever heard, if you're familiar with the story of Todd Marinovich, that was who he was. And he is known today as one of the biggest busts in NFL history. He was known as a complete waste of talent. No pun intended with how wasted he was so many times. He is the poster boy for everything that was wrong, the poster boy for failure. But God is zealous to save all people. God is zealous to save us. Whatever mistakes we might have made, whatever opportunities we might have wasted, any place where we have failed, hear it clearly, friends. You've heard the cliche, your failure should not be fatal. Your failure should not define who you are. But whatever you have done, whatever you have thought in your life, God is zealous to save you. And there's a big difference between a zealot and a fan. He's a different kind of king, and he's going to bring a different kind of kingdom. When we think of Jesus as king, if you don't know his story, if you don't really know who Jesus is, and you tell someone Jesus is king, they might imagine someone who was raised in a palace, someone who studied at the finest, most prestigious universities, somebody who was literally born with that silver spoon in their mouth. Is that the kind of king that we serve? Not really. I mean, he left his heavenly glory and he put on a costume, if you will. It was called human flesh, so we could see him and understand him. But he wasn't born in a palace. He was born in a barn. He didn't have satin sheets. He slept in the feeding trough that the animals ate out of. And when others heard that he was born to be king and that news began to spread, even with his birth, King Herod said, we've got to kill him and we need to kill all baby boys so I know I get the right one. And that caused Jesus and his family to flee and become refugees living in another country. He wasn't trained at the finest universities, and even as a Jew, he was not trained under the feet of the most well-respected rabbis. No, he was bred for a higher purpose by a higher being, his heavenly Father. And the kingdom of our God is a different kind of kingdom. It is one established in peace that will last forever, established in justice, established in righteousness. But he doesn't simply sit enthroned in heavenly glory. It's not wrong to think that. But that's not all we think about, because Wesley tells us in his song that he was born to reign in us forever. And that's what we're going to talk about next week. The good news today is it doesn't matter what you have done, the zeal of the Lord Almighty is to show you his saving power and his saving activity. No matter what you've done, he's zealous to accomplish this in your life. Would you pray with me?